Thank you all so much for clicking on this Dallas Cowboys Report video. I greatly appreciate it. We will get into Mike Nolan replacements because I know a lot of you guys want him fired, and we'll discuss the likelihood there and all of that in just a little bit. Before we do that, though, if you haven't already, please subscribe. I would greatly appreciate it. We know about 50% of you guys watch the show but are not actually subscribed, which really doesn't make a whole lot of sense because we got daily videos coming out. If you don't want to miss anything around the Dallas Cowboys, hit that big red button and subscribe today. Now, before we get into the replacements for Mike Nolan, let's discuss this Cowboys defense in general because, simply put, they suck. They are historically bad this year, and that is a major, major problem, even with the injuries, even with the limited training camp and offseason. No defense has been worse this year, at least as far as I'm concerned, or maybe in best case, they're bottom 5, than this Cowboys team. They are dead last in points per game, at least allowed, and dead last in takeaways. You can't be last in both, guys. That's not going to work. And look, what we have to do in evaluating Mike Nolan is separate the reasons and the excuses. One of the excuses I've seen is that, the COVID impact, they didn't have time to install a scheme. Probably means you made it too complicated, although maybe it's the players who haven't picked it up fast enough, and that's on them. But other coaching staffs have been totally overhauled and brought in new defenses. Washington, New York, Cleveland, Carolina, all totally revamped everything. New coordinators, new head coaches. And then DVOA, which is nerd math. It just factors across, hey, this is what the average defense would do. So it balances out level of competition and the turnovers the offense have had that have killed the Cowboys. Cowboys are still 28th in the NFL. They suck. They have to get this figured out. Now, again, this is a coach problem and it is a player problem. And Mike Nolan has tried different things. He's tried to use more 5-man fronts at times, stuck with 4-man fronts, used big nickel packages with an extra safety on the field. Hasn't really helped. And if you can't get right as you get Leighton Vander Esch back and hopefully Chidobe Awuzie at some point in the near future before the bye, you might want to make a change because you're allowing 36 points per game. If you don't have a couple get-right games here against Washington and Philadelphia, you're in trouble. And in reality, there's already finger-pointing going on between the coaching staff and between the players. Now, here's what Jane Slater tweeted out yesterday. Cowboys players initially bought in to keeping things internal. Now, as they sit 2-4, the disconnect is leaking out, on the coaching staff, totally unprepared. They don't teach. They don't have any sense of adjusting on the fly. Another player, they just aren't good at their jobs. That is a problem. Now, my suspicion here is that this is mostly directed at the defensive side of the football. And I want to emphasize this, by the way. The players and the coaches, they both get blame here. But it's pretty tough to completely overhaul a defense in the middle of a season. If the coaching staff doesn't have the players' trust, you're kind of cooked at that point. That is a significant problem. So I'm not saying that moving on from Mike Nolan fixes everything. It absolutely does not. That is not where we're at right now for the Dallas Cowboys. But I totally understand those of you who want to move on from Mike Nolan because the scheme change has happened and it just hasn't really worked out very well. So I will make this the pinned comment on today's video. Let me know what you want to do. F for fire Mike Nolan or K for keep. Now, for those of you that typed in F, we're going to look at some replacements. These are in season only. I'm not looking ahead to the end of the year, so only guys you could feasibly hire right now. Oh, by the way, no Chris Richard. You know why? Because it didn't work. You're trying to solve for X here. And if the teacher says, hey, Tom, what's the answer? And you go, well, is it 5? And the teacher says, no. You go, okay, how about 8? Nope, 8's even further away. You don't go back to 5 again. You know the answer's not 5. You got to try something different. And we'll begin with, I guess, something different at number 5 here. That is Marvin Lewis. Now, he is the one exception to hire him right now. It's actually a little bit tricky because he does have a job right now. He's the co-defensive coordinator at Arizona State. I actually have concerns about hiring Marvin Lewis because I genuinely would wonder And same reason why I had concerns about them interviewing him for the head coaching job last offseason. Who would really be making this hire? But I feel it's important to include Marvin on here because he might be Stephen Jones' guy because they were on the competition committee together. I think they get along pretty well. Now, way back when, before he was the Bengals head coach and that all fell apart, Marvin Lewis was one of the best defensive coordinators in the NFL. And he'd done a little bit of 3-4, a little bit of 4-3. There's some scheme, multibility in there, if I make up a word. It could happen. I think it makes more sense end of season, but I did want to include him given the Stephen Jones connection. I name many of you I know are looking out for here. Dan Quinn. Falcons already fired him after an 0-5 start. Now, he's had success before as the Seahawks defensive coordinator. And from a schematic standpoint, Quinn is a lot closer to that old Cowboys defense we saw 2019 than the current one. I don't think they were as basic, but it was still kind of that Seahawks-style cover 3 base defense, which I don't know what the base defense is. Now it changes every week, and that's been a bit of a problem, I think, for the Cowboys, but at least Mike Nolan's trying new things. The issue here is that, hey, a mid-season hire with a different scheme is difficult. We've seen the Cowboys already have issues adjusting to an entire limited offseason of a new scheme. Now you're trying to make a change again? That's dangerous. Now, Quinn has had success as a DC before. If you were looking in the offseason, I actually think Dan Quinn would be one of the most likely candidates here, but we're talking in season. So with that in mind, who do you guys want as the defensive coordinator for the Dallas Cowboys? I do want to focus, at least for the time being, on in-season replacements. So you're not going to go hire somebody else who has an assistant coaching job somewhere in the NFL. Focus on in-season and keep in mind that a total schematic overhaul is pretty damn difficult when you're already in the middle of the year. I think many of you will type in good old Wade Phillips. Now, he wasn't brought back by the Rams after 2019. I think there's even a bigger scheme difference between Wade and Nolan and Richard and the Marinelli system and what Quinn would do. But he said he still wants to coach. He's 37 years old here. Again, I want to emphasize those in-season stuff is difficult. But Wade did a great job of still adjusting his defensive scheme to maximize Aaron Donald. Now, Wade has always been a 3-4 coordinator, but depending on what fronts and schemes you utilize, he still played Aaron Donald in that exact, or 73 years old, excuse me. I don't know if I said 37 for Wade. He's 73, my bad. For Wade, he still utilized Donald correctly. I think that matters. I think that Wade Phillips showed he did a better job of maximizing what the Rams had on the roster than what maybe Mike Nolan has done so far. Everywhere he's gone, he's been a great defensive coordinator. Now, it hasn't always been a long stay, but, I mean, I'd take 3 years of this. Heck, I'd take 3 years of being a league average defense. Again, DVOA, nerd numbers, but I think it's pretty damn accurate. He's been awesome everywhere he has gone. So if you're going to go external, yeah, I think Wade Phillips is at the top of my list. If, of course, he does want to come back to the Cowboys and everything is good between him and Jerry and Steven and everyone else that was still around when he got fired by the Cowboys. But let me know what you guys want. Which option would you prefer for defensive coordinator? Again, in season, I for internal, E for external. As you'll see, I think if you're making an in-season adjustment, if you're getting an interim coach, I think it almost has to be internal. Before we dive into the top internal options for this Dallas Cowboys team, a reminder, head over to BetUS. It's chatsports.com/bet. Use that promo code you see on screen, Cowboys125. If you put down $100, you'll get two things. A 125% deposit bonus, that's pretty baller, and we'll get you guys a Cowboys jersey as well. Maybe you want CeeDee Lamb. To be honest, not too many other players that are all that appealing at this current moment. Once you sign up and deposit, and for new customers only, I forgot to mention that earlier. If you already got this jersey deal, you can't get another one. New customers only. Email us, cowboys@chatsports.com, once you guys sign up, deposit, and place a bet, and we'll get you guys hooked up with a Cowboys jersey of your choosing. All right, internal now, which just from adjusting and trying to keep some semblance of stability and not confusing the players already more than they might be. Hey, Jim Tomsula. Now, he's kind of a weird fit as a defensive coordinator because in the NFL at least, He's been a head coach. He's never been a DC, which is kind of wild. Now, his D-line track record when stops in Washington and San Francisco has been really impressive. This year's unit is struggling. And again, it comes down to the who do you blame, the coaches or the players thing. I mean, it's tough to blame the coach when your top two guys, Tristan Hill and of course, Gerald McCoy, are all hurt. And then Dontari Poe looks completely washed up, and Tyrone Crawford doesn't look the same, and Antoine Woods is a rotation guy. So you have issues there. Again, assigning the blame. We're focused on the coaches today. He did have a stint previously as some head coach in D.C. in NFL Europe, but that doesn't mean too much. And again, it's tough for me to, seeing what Tomsula has done elsewhere in the NFL, Washington, San Francisco, it's tough for me to assign the blame to him for the issues with, at least so far, this Cowboys defensive line, especially the defensive tackles. Maybe they're not great fits, but at some point, how much do you blame the players? How much do you blame the coaches? So keeping that thought in mind of the blame of coaches versus players, let's keep it on the staff. Again, yes, both get blame here. But what's your confidence level in this current staff? Rate this for me on a scale of 1 to 10. 1 being you have the utmost confidence in the Dallas Cowboys to get it together, or have no confidence, excuse me. 10 being, this is all the players' fault. This is a Hall of Fame coaching staff. I'm curious where you guys check in. Let me know what you think in the comments section. Now, if you're going to fire Mike Nolan midseason, I think there is a clear and obvious replacement. It's number 1 by a wide margin, George Edwards, who has served as a defensive coordinator before, and he did it under Mike Zimmer. Now, I will make note, Zimmer was clearly the lead dog on that defense, so it's a little tough to figure out how much credit Edwards gets versus what Zimmer gets. He's been a DC before as well, briefly with Washington and the Buffalo Bills, but he spent a long time in Minnesota. Cowboys linebackers coach as well, so like Mike Nolan, potentially concerningly like Mike Nolan, there is a linebacker background there. I think Edwards is your obvious fit. If you're going to fire Nolan, you have an interim DC, you give Edwards the first crack. He has the background, has the experience, and honestly, I would have been on board hiring him in the first place. They went with Mike Nolan, which I liked. So far, I was wrong on that. That's my bad. Now, the other defensive assistant coaches on this team right now that I want to make note of, Leon Lett, Scott McClurley, who has been a linebackers coach at most, Maurice Linguist is very young, Al Harris as well. These aren't really good options for the Dallas Cowboys. Those are positional coaches. If you're looking for a D coordinator replacement who's called the plays before, or has been a DC before, I think it is very, very clearly George Edwards. But again, those are in-season options. Those are the ones that make more sense if you're trying to replace him for now. Long-term, next season, off-season, well, we'll do a video on that if he does end up getting fired. I want to thank everyone again for watching this Dallas Cowboys Report video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you haven't already, please subscribe. That way you don't miss a single thing right here. Just click that button. All you got to do is click and subscribe. That way you don't miss a single thing here on the Dallas Cowboys Report. You guys are the very best. Thank you all for tuning in.